financial crime. So please can I welcome our panelists onto the stage. We have Bronwyn Boyle, who's the Chief Information Security Officer for PPRO. We have Zoe Karali, who's the Head of Conduct, Financial Crime and Compliance for the Middle East for Standard Chartered, and Waleed Rassuli, who's the Head of Operations for MENA for Bitpanda. Thank you so much for joining us today. Financial crime, a bit of an abrupt change from talking just about generative AI and all of the opportunities. I guess in different ways, a big part of all of your jobs is to worry about what people might be doing to kind of hack into your institutions. And as we think about the advent of AI, I guess the big thing that I'm trying to toss up is it overall a good thing or a bad thing? Is it something that empowers you to have better cybersecurity and kind of catch more criminals who are trying to attack your institutions? Or is it something that empowers cyber attacks themselves and makes life more difficult? So maybe I could start by asking each of you in turn. We might start with you, Bronwyn. When you think about AI and financial crime, what are the issues that what's the single issue that keeps you up at night? What do you worry about?
So thanks for having me, first of all, Josh. Great to be here today. I think, to your point, it is very definitely, sorry, can you hear me okay? Yeah, it's very definitely something that's very front and center of all of our kind of security and risk management focused topics at the moment. And I think from my perspective, I think one of the key worries that we have to be aware of is around how it's empowering the industrialization of security hacking and cybercrime. So from my perspective, I think we're kind of very much in a new frontier a little bit around kind of how we're defending against both cybercrime and financial crime, which is these very, very much two sides of the same coin. And yes, while we can use AI as a way of defending, which is fantastic, like we're seeing much better convergence. Sorry, is this okay? Yeah.
Could we have the analog mic? Yeah. I think Bronwyn's mic is cutting out a bit.
Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry.
It's on, yeah. Hello. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, so I think while there's no doubt that AI is absolutely helping us, better defend against both cybercrime and financial crime, which are pretty much two sides of the same coin, I think we do need to be very mindful about how it's actually changing the attack landscape. And I think from my perspective, we're seeing this industrialization of cybercrime. AI is now really lowering the barrier to entry for any bad actors who are keen to do nefarious things within our financial services systems. And I think when you couple that as well with another quite significant shift in the global macroeconomic elements, we're really looking at that industrialization on a whole new domain. So I think we're now sitting this nexus of massive technological development, which is now freely commoditized. That's also now sitting in this triumvirate of cybercrime with modern slavery and human trafficking, where we're seeing state-sponsored, sanctioned cybercrime, particularly in places like Cambodia and Myanmar, where they're using AI at scale, often with victims of human trafficking who are kind of themselves in that kind of cybercrime ecosystem a victim. But they can now reach a huge audience with highly specified, targeted cyber attacks. And again, I think from a general public perspective, maybe there's a lack of awareness of the impact that can have in the type of interactions that we're having with people online. So I think at the moment it's very definitely, I think, an attacker's game right now. But I'm keen to see how we can better leverage it for the good side as well.
Thank you. It's difficult stuff. I guess, Zoe, same question to you. What are the parts of financial crime that are keeping you awake at night, and perhaps you might need the mic? Oh.
Okay, thank you. Very similarly with what we've heard earlier today and from Bronwyn as well, the scale and pace of technology advancements and new technology, artificial intelligence, and the misuse by criminals is rising. And we heard earlier about deep faking and accounting over money mules, cyber-enabled fraud globally has risen. So that is at the forefront of our minds in terms of how do we enhance and we strengthen our operative effectiveness of our controls. And especially as we're moving into a more threat-based and data-driven risk management, to be able to look at the threats, the typologies, the trends, and step in quickly to enhance these specific controls and use technology and automation to be able to be ahead of the game. So a lot of work in this space. This is what I think everyone is talking about today, and very important to get it right, to be able to move to a more preventative and predictive and more proactive risk management rather than just detecting. So technology and AI, we can talk about the benefits and potential uses, but yeah, a lot's going on in this space.
Thank you so much. Now, Waleed, you have a slightly different vantage point on this, right? You head up operations.
Sorry.
Your mic seems to be working.
I don't know if mine is working.
Yes,
Yeah.
that seems to be working.
Can you repeat the question, please? I have a hard time.
What is the single biggest issue in financial crime or cybersecurity that keeps you up at night?
I mean, I'm from the blockchain and the crypto space. For me, any sort of what we call hack or rug pull is very stressful, because what happens is that because it's our industry is such that it contaminates the whole sector once it happened. It takes us years back in terms of adoption. It questions the legitimacy of the industry, and it's very difficult to then get back to the adoption curve. So I'm thinking, for example, 18 months ago there was the Luna attack on the stablecoin USD, and it vanished, like I think 65 billion worth of asset. And it literally triggered the bear market. A lot of institutions took a step back. And it is very difficult to go back from there. So it's kind of like every time this sort of thing happen, it just like it's such big, massive damage for our industry. I mean, you have this sort of like, I mean, Terra Luna was considered as a Ponzi. You have this sort of similar stuff in the traditional world, but I feel that the impact is much less. You can take, for example, the Bernie Madoff Ponzi scheme, where first of all, because of the nature of a technology or industry, sorry, we're much smaller, so it kind of like propagates very fast. It touches the whole sector of our industries, and also we don't have bailouts. We don't have safeguards, so it's really touched every part of it, and it really created very long-term damaging effect to our industries.
That's huge, this point on, you know, blockchain being a relatively new sector, something that people kind of bind up with some of the worst things that were happening in the crypto space a couple of years ago, and therefore being vulnerable to any attack that could kind of tip it over the edge again. Do you think people's confidence in using blockchain recovery has recovered from the past couple of years where they might associate it with
the confidence? We need to build it, right? Like, it's all about education. It's all about showing that the technology is here also to protect us. I think the paradigm is completely different, and when we think of traditional financial services, all the safeguards, there's a lot of safeguards who are human. For the blockchain space, all these intermediaries are replaced by smart contract, by automatic gatekeepers. So we need to make sure, we need to kind of like completely shift the paradigm and educate people within our industry onto how to safeguard our technology, so that we build confidence as we speak. So, yeah.
Thanks very much. So look, we started on a bit of a down note, saying, you know, what's the biggest risk, what's worrying you. I guess the flip side of the question is, how well is, you know, the technology that you can deploy to protect your firms keeping pace with these worries? Bronwyn, maybe I could start with you. Are we, you know, who's winning the race, and where are the points where actually AI can kind of help you overcome some of these difficulties?
So it's interesting, we always talk about the fact that, security, counter-fraud, compliance are often reactive. And, we say it's kind of like a cat and mouse game, I think the AI paradigm is obviously the cat is now a lion. We're desperately trying to kind of get the same economies of scale and get those same advantages. But we have far more limits on our velocity. So, I mean, the safeguards that we need to put in place, rightly so, that the previous panel talked about, they can really drag the ability to kind of leverage those benefits, leverage that return on investment, and actually really start seeing commensurate and kind of equal value within the defensive space as it's being used in the attack space. I think the other real challenge for us, and again, we talk about, the data privacy and data sovereignty needs, they also can put barriers to entry around using AI to have that cross-sectionality around international-based financial crime, and also to try and kind of break down silos in security data and fraud data. I think that's a real area. I think that there's space for the industry to work more collaboratively, both at kind of public sector, private sector partnership levels, but also to try and get more creative use of how we exploit our data. I've been lucky to have roles in security and counter-fraud in fintechs and in banking, and the levels of siloing of data that you see is quite exceptional. Now, it would be wonderful if AI can unlock that data and kind of really start seeing those benefits of correlation to get more proactive and more timely real-time analysis that can move, as Zoe says, to that preventative model. But I think we have a lot of inherent obstacles to overcome, and again, the attackers aren't facing those same sort of blockers, so we need to be aware of that lag.
Thank you. And Zoe, how are you thinking about the future of kind of financial crime prevention and kind of how you can deploy these, how you can deploy these tools or defend against them as well?
I just wanted to refer to the earlier example of deepfake, and a lot of financial institutions for non-face-to-face onboarding on client authentication, they use the image or a video with the client, and now this becomes very challenging with deepfake. The industry is looking very closely into it to find ways to tackle this issue. In terms of uses of technology and AI, from fraud detection, fraud surveillance systems, there's many systems that are being used today, for example, for high-value cross-border transactions, where the counterparties are known or untrusted. An alert is created to be able to stop the transaction or confirm with the client. In this case, SWIFT and the industry is looking into further enhancing the system by using AI and machine learning techniques, using consortium information and risk scoring, so for even more effective results. Further fraud surveillance systems, they develop every day by learning from typologies, discussions with the industry. There is availability of a lot of systems that can use behavior biometric information to ensure that the authenticity of the client and the transactions. From an AI perspective, the deployment of a new system, and this is why it's available to the fraudsters and criminals, because it's there for them to use. From the industry perspective, to deploy an AI system, it has to be bespoke to the organization, to use the bespoke data of the organization, to go through multiple layers from a governance perspective. There are certain principles that need to be observed in terms of transparency, explainability. We need to be able to explain to our regulators how the model operates to arrive at a decision, and where is the human element in terms of the decision. We use AI for name screening at client onboarding and during the client life cycle. Machine learning techniques are used by the model to look at historical decisions, transaction behavioral information, and watch lists. It's an effective tool that we reduce the false positives, meaning that we can focus on where the problem actually is, where the suspicious activity is. And I see potential in other uses of AI, further to name screening, into transaction monitoring. Maybe some players in the industry are already using them, and being able with machine learning to have further patterns and complex scenarios to be able to detect that activity. And hopefully in the future we will be able to use AI in terms of being more predictive, in terms of thematic issues, trends, and be able to use this in terms of our threat assessments and immediate actions to enhance our operative effectiveness. So opportunity, lots of legislation that is evolving around the world, including in Bahrain with the enactment of the artificial intelligence law and principles and further regulation that is expected that is going to firstly protect and stop the criminals from using it, but also enabling the industry and companies to use responsibly technology.
Thank you very much. Waleed, could I ask you a similar question, which is sort of, how have you been, in order to deploy these tools, you need to be kind of investing in your own capabilities to kind of detect kind of common fraudulent activity around blockchain applications and how you're going to prevent it. How have you been looking at, A, the most common types of fraudulent activity you need to ward off, and B, the kind of how you need to invest in your own systems to combat them?
I mean, in our world, I mean, that's what we saw a lot of time. We're more reactive because, I mean, fraudsters are more and more innovative in the way they do this sort of fraudulent act. Well, back in the day, like every time they had some head start. Back in the day, for example, in my world, in a decentralized trading space, fraudsters were trying to visualize or capture, anticipate the trade that you would make, and they front run you. They go on the DEX, they hike up the gas fee, and they buy the asset and they sell it at a profit. Now you see with AI what they do. They kind of even anticipate the trading pattern. They kind of analyze tons of large sets of data set, and they try to analyze and anticipate some of the trading pattern, and they front run you this way. So what we've been doing is kind of like understanding what all the fraudsters are doing across the world, and we're communicating with all different VASP across the world, all different trading exchange, etc., to get a good understanding of what are sort of threats that can happen. And that way, if we basically through communication, sharing knowledge across the board, we're able to set up safeguard. But on the other side, AI has helped us also to recover some of the funds. Like there's companies in our world again who like chain analysis who are using AI and kind of identifying suspicious behavior between transfers of funds across wallet, and even sometimes identify the wallet that are committing these frauds. And that helps dramatically law enforcement to recover some of these funds. So, I mean, we have these AI that are like very innovative, fraudsters that are innovating with AI, but we have to admit that AI helped us a lot also to fight these crimes.
Thank you very much. One of the things that I grapple with in all sorts of spheres in our journalism is quite how much is changing as we move from kind of old traditional finance to newer kind of more technologically geared, kind of more decentralized finance. I'm interested, kind of as a general question to the group, maybe we could start with you, Bronwyn, on how are the threats that modern finance based more on technology and decentralized systems faces, are the threats that faces distinct from traditional finance? Are they different in any way, or is it just the same old kind of scams?
I think they have evolved substantially. I mean, again, maybe the principles are the same. You know, folks are still trying to kind of get kind of money and get financial reward. But again, the scale and the methodology is different. And again, I think that's why, again, it's quite difficult for the defenders because the patterns are not necessarily as well understood as they have been in the past. And again, that's why, as Waleed said, that ability to try and very quickly learn how fraudsters are adapting to a much more kind of heterogeneous, much more fragmented digital financial services ecosystem is so important. But I think one of the other things that we really need to think about is the point of trust, right? And I think, the folks at the previous panel mentioned this as well. We're used to having very trusted relationships with our banks. And that, again, that psychological principle often then plays into how our levels of expectation and our levels of security from a psychological perspective are evident in kind of online transactions. Now, that's a key area that fraudsters are exploiting. And again, I think it's an area that we really need to lean in on addressing in terms of much better user awareness, much better kind of mutual verification in terms of kind of, ensuring that, you are engaging with the financial services entity that you think you are. And during my time at Open Banking, it was really great to get confirmation of payee put in place in the UK so that we started to get that end-to-end validation of a sender of a financial transaction and a recipient, right? You actually have that feedback loop. I think some of the great innovations that we're seeing now in the counter-fraud space and the security space are looking at similar kind of real-time transaction risk indicators where there is that holistic view of all of the counterparties in a payment transaction. And I think to Zoe's point, the great work that SWIFT is doing, the new ISO 22002 standards that are coming into force next year, all of those will help enrich our knowledge of the parties within an individual transaction, help counter that.
Thank you very much. Zoe, I guess at Standard Chartered you work for a traditional financial institution, but obviously one that is deploying new technology and so kind of using these new methods in finance as well. Have you seen the nature of the threats that you're facing and trying to protect against change?
As we discussed earlier, the threats have changed in view of technology and cryptocurrency, crypto exchanges, and the fact that in some jurisdictions these are not regulated. Now, in Bahrain, we have strong regulation around crypto and crypto exchanges that really helps. In terms of financial crime and the emerging and evolving threats that we see today, I think they are common, they're similar all in the industry, financial industry, we all face these threats, but they manifest in different ways in view of the way that we operate. For example, as mentioned in blockchain, there's anonymity. However, there is transparency in terms of the flow of the transactions, which is not the case with the traditional banking system where you see the funds within, then when they move out of the system, unless there's a sanction party, then you do not have that continuity to see if there is an underlying financial crime related. So to the point of collaboration and exchange of information it's maybe a step ahead in terms of working together and being able to detect these activities and along with law enforcement to be able to tackle financial crime. Waleed, over to you.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear everything. I couldn't hear the question.
Oh, yeah. Are you seeing, I suppose, blockchain is so new that there might not have been time for the threats to be changing yet, but are you seeing the nature of the threats that you have to protect against changing at all?
In the blockchain space, how do we protect? So, the thing is, when you think of the blockchain space, there's a lot of similar threats. The only thing is that the safeguard and the gatekeepers are automatic. But surprisingly, when you think of the blockchain, and you would think that most of the people in the blockchain, they're tech savvy, so they kind of like encounter these cyber threats, but they're much less sensitized to phishing attacks, to deepfake. We had in my previous company, we had a whole interview process that was done through a deepfake AI interviewer, and we only realized that it was a deepfake because our colleague was very open for this interview, and we actually realized that the profile was fake. The profile was completely online on LinkedIn with a very legit profile. today AI, what they do, they kind of like build this synthetic profile by analyzing tons of data and make it so relevant to the people they communicate with. It's become so scary. In our field, we have on the one side very stringent audits of our system, because obviously that's where the weakness of our infrastructure is. But also we go through very hard training, very regular training of our staff to identify, for them to be able to identify phishing attacks, deepfake, any sort of threat that could make our system or point of entry vulnerable.
Thanks so much. Could I go back to you, Zoe? I'll ask one more question, then we'll be opening it up to the audience if anybody has anything that they would like to ask. We're in Bahrain. Are there any kind of particular vulnerabilities, or on the flip side, invulnerabilities, things that are easier to protect against in operating in the Middle East that you found?
When we look at the emerging and evolving threats as a financial institution that is international, we do these assessments and the threat-based assessment based on different indicators and patterns and information we have globally. And you see, for example, for cyber-enabled fraud and money mules, we see them in other jurisdictions, mainly in Asia or in Europe, and not as much here at this point in time. And the positive thing in Bahrain is that we work together with the regulator, with policymakers and law enforcement in this space. And the fact that the regulatory framework has evolved and has strengthened in terms of, as I mentioned earlier, crypto exchanges being regulated, the AI new regulation that further regulations are expected, creates a strong framework where we see that the policymakers engage with the industry, the regulator engages with us for feedback and working together. So there is a lot of positivity in terms of moving forward in tackling financial crime. And a very important aspect for me is law and regulation and collaboration. So that and maybe in other jurisdictions we see more of private partnerships that are being established under a strong legal framework to deal with data sovereignty, data privacy issues. It would be very helpful to see this evolve globally so that we can work together in this respect. So that would be from myself.
Thank you so much. Do we have any questions from the audience for our panel? We have one in the back row of the front section, if we can get a mic.
My name is Mi'ad Latfallah. My question is related to the transaction monitoring. I'm sure that the AI-based transaction monitoring is much better than the traditional one, which is the rule-based one. But does it have any threat in relation to the data security or information security? This is my question.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Transaction monitoring. Anyone who'd like to go?
Yeah, I mean, from my side, it's not something that we have deployed, but it is available in the industry and is being used. And obviously, I agree with you, there's a lot of potential in terms of better detecting financial activity and suspicious transactions. But you wanted to...
I think it's an excellent question around the security risks that are associated with deploying that type of AI-based technology. And, you know, it is interesting, the whole kind of security software development life cycle is very well established for traditional software. I think it's still very much emerging. If you look at kind of LLM ops and kind of AI security, you know, it's still a kind of a nascent space. It's still emerging and evolving. I definitely think we need to be really mindful around the security of the underlying data that AI is going to be trained on. You know, I think Emma in the previous panel mentioned again that the quality of data is absolutely essential, but you also have to be very mindful again around kind of retaining the security controls. You know, there's a real risk around deploying AI that it's going to massively, dramatically, and very quickly highlight any poor data security practices that you might have in your organization. I also think as well, you know, there are emerging challenges around kind of, you know, the use of different types of of AI in the marketplace. And again, kind of the types of challenge that we've had around open source software, the security threats that they pose. Any security folks who had to do work over the Christmas when the Log4j vulnerability came out a couple of years ago will know kind of what it's like to see kind of, publicly consumable technology deployed in an organization and then all of a sudden vulnerable. It causes a very significant impact. So I think you're spot on. We really need to look very mindfully and very thoughtfully around the security controls as we start adopting AI at scale in our organizations.
Thanks very much, Bronwyn. Do we have any other questions from the audience? Oh, we have one in the red. Oh, a mic is coming to you. Can we try and get another mic, perhaps, or?
Hi. Hello?
We have one.
It's very difficult to hear.
Hello? Yes.
Got you.
Thank you. Fatma Abul, and my question is on data security again. So, are you seeing any efforts towards security when it comes to the cross-section of deepfake, phone and IP cloning, and when we talk about blockchain, the fact that the security of the blockchain depends on the size of the blockchain. So the cross-section of those three elements, is there any effort currently and thinking towards how to secure the threats?
Thanks very much. So I suppose perhaps only Waleed has thought about the security of the blockchain. So we might come to him. So I guess the question is, how do you think about the issue that the security of the blockchain derives from the size of the blockchain itself, which may change?
Okay, so in terms of security for the blockchain, I mean, what the safeguarding digital asset is a completely different paradigm. And what we really are able to do now is to, on the one hand, there's a whole custody space where what we do is basically completely safeguard all the different private key and private information completely offline, and we only able to access it with the key being spread across various people. So it's really completely safeguarded in the blockchain space. Then we have also the education. All our staff is constantly. I think I'm not exactly sure what happened in the traditional space, but we have literally training about security every month and how to identify deepfake, phishing emails. And we have AI that detects not necessarily all the phishing emails. We have a first filter that prevents, like, we calculated like roughly 70% the phishing email that are stopped by AI. So there's layers that are being built to prevent us from any sort of attack.
Thank you so much. I just wondered, the other part of the question was on cloning of phones and IDs through deepfakes, and this must be something that you're thinking about an awful lot as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's getting to the stage again where your kind of phone is nearly your digital ID, and obviously, again, with the advent of digital wallets, again, a compromise of that now, the effects can be so far-reaching. So, yeah, security is absolutely imperative. And, again, I think, we do need to be mindful. I think, yes, regulation is catching up with deepfakes. Yes, detection mechanisms are catching up. But at the moment, we're in this, again, this kind of liminal zone where, the application and the ubiquity of the ability to kind of push deepfakes out at scale isn't necessarily being matched by those detective capabilities. And that's, again, where kind of the end user awareness becomes really important. It's really fantastic to see, again, initiatives that are focused on empowering an end user on how to kind of detect deepfakes. I don't know if you want to catch AI, go back to the source, Terminator 2. I don't know if you remember that movie, but there was a bit in that where they're asking about the name of the dog, and again, the Terminator didn't know the name of the dog, so they knew that the foster parents were dead. You know, it's good to have a safe word, folks. It's good to have a word that you know, especially with your family now that you kind of you know only you guys know, and if you are compromised by something that's untoward, you can use that.
Thank you so much. We have about run out of time, so all that remains is for me to thank you so much for giving your time and thoughts to us. This has been a fascinating panel, so thank you everybody, and thank you for coming.
Thank you.
We're going to have a short networking. Thank you. We're going to have a short 5-minute break now, and then we're going to be coming back to hear about changes in consumer behavior from Mariel Montenegro, who's one of the co-founders of the Decision Lab.